welcome. This is Rav Ariel and Rabbi Batsheva Meiri. I'm so excited to be teaching today, to be working together today and learning from Rabbi Meiri. And so this is the start of a new series that I've had it in my mind for a while. I've always wanted to know the stories of all of the teachers who I've been in orbit of for all these years, and I never really did. And so I figured, why not do it publicly? Why not do it in a way that, um, the thing that I value can also become a gift to other people. And uh, so for me, I'm excited to hear from Batsheva. The goal of this is to interview lots of teachers and to teach you new things about Jewish mindfulness that you might not have known, and also to give you new opportunities to learn with teachers who might speak to your heart, your soul, and always give you some kind of hands-on skill for the journey. So just not just fluff. We're not just going to talk. We're also going to practice. So if you can, if you feel moved, please share this with other people, and register for the site for the project that Batsheva is working on now. If you see this after she's already recorded and that uh, retreat is done, then you'll sign up for the next year and the next thing that she's doing. Um, and so what we're going to do today is we're going to practice for a few minutes. Batsheva is going to lead us in 10 minutes of practice, and then I'll interview her. I'll get to find out what it is that brought her here today, and hopefully we'll also give you some details about this upcoming online retreat for women that she is leading in a few weeks. So, um, Batsheva, I know you from a few years ago when I started my Jewish mindfulness teacher training formally, and you were also there, but you were already on the other side of the training, and of that particular training, and then extending your training so that you could continue deepening your ability to your knowledge of what it's like teaching, what it's like teaching on retreat, and so you were teaching the teachers, and I always found everything you said moving and deep and wise, and so I'm excited to share you with everybody else that is watching today. Um, and so I know that you're in Asheville. You're the rabbi of a congregation in Asheville, and and I know that before that you did other things with Hartman, and yeah, that's true, right? Okay, so and you're a powerful teacher, and I'm excited to hear from you today. Do you want to lead us in practice? Is there anything I missed about your bio? So yeah, let's jump in. If you're at home, now is a good time for you to kind of get your earphones out and go to a quiet place and sit down or lay down, whatever you're comfortable with. And if you're driving, keep your eyes open. If you're listening and driving, keep your eyes open. And then maybe listen to this later when you can get a few minutes to yourself. So that's all I've got to say, and we'll jump in. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Rav Ariel. I'm delighted and honored and feel on a parallel journey with you. We have a lot to talk about. I hope we'll get to martial arts too.
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about that yet at all.
So, I wanted to center just this few minutes of practice on the opening pasuk of this week's Parsha because to me it's really rich and it's the moment when God has Pharaoh has sent off the people, and the Torah says that God didn't lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, which was nearer. For God thought for a moment that if the Israelites encountered war, they would turn back towards Egypt. So the shorter route actually posed certain perils, and so God took them a long way. And it wasn't because of the actual perils, it was because in facing the danger, in coming in contact with something that was frightening, the people might feel Mitzrayim rising up in them. And that is actually the move, I guess, in mindfulness that we're watching for. And that in fact, and some of the medieval commentators even, go on to say that that's exactly what God was doing, was taking them the long way, giving them some breathing room to cultivate within themselves the qualities that led them out of Egypt, that would lead them not out of the Egypt of the land, but out of the Egypt that's inside of us, the small mind, the constriction, the frightened parts of ourselves that are not liberated. And so if we just bring that home to our own landscape, we're sort of always leaving, or have the opportunity to leave, whatever Mitzrayim we find ourselves in, the conditioned patterns that hold us back from being free, the harmful thoughts, the harmful behaviors. And we so long to leave these places. And so in our practice, we give ourselves, literally, we give ourselves the breathing room to gain some perspective, to widen our gaze, to broaden the constriction and become more spacious. So I invite you to just breathe with me for just a few minutes. And so you probably want to, if you haven't already, settled into your seat, to feel the cushion underneath you, to feel the pressure of the floor meeting your bottom or the bottoms of your feet, to allow the channel of energy to go up and down your spine as the crown of your head reaches heavenward. And just find your breath in all that, rising and falling in the chest, coming in and out of the air through the nostrils, and the expanding and contracting of the ribs. And in finding the breath, maybe find that long route back to yourself. Back to just being with this breath in this moment. And we find if we can focus a little bit narrowly on the breath, that actually all of the busyness of the mind can sometimes fall away. And while we may be focusing on one thing, there's not a whole lot more that's troubling or meeting us. We can just focus on this breath, on this one step towards liberation. And with each breath, be farther and farther from Mitzrayim. And as you also focus on the breath, you might also just notice any sensations in the body in general. Maybe even inviting breath to loosen constriction. to invite spaciousness where there might be tightness. I find that it's helpful sometimes to do this, especially on the exhale, the letting go, letting be of the exhale. There's a little taste of freedom in every breath. If we're paying attention.
That was lovely. I love the idea of it's a little bissel, right? It's just a little bit, a little teeny tiny bit. And which is the idea. Is the idea is to give people just a tiny bit if you've never had it before. And if you have, then you probably are, or hopefully you're involved in a community of some sort so that you can get this more often than just once in a while. Um, Whew. I always like to smile when I finish meditating. I feel like it's important. It's an important part of the practice is like remind yourself to smile. I remember somebody said that in one of our retreats.
Thich Nhat Hanh has a whole meditation where you have all your organs smiling. It's fantastic if you haven't ever.
Oh, I'd love that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I remember that the famous story I've heard about Thich Nhat Hanh is that he was teaching people the loving kindness practice, and he said, "I invite you to smile when you bring up joy." And somebody said, "You can't tell me how to feel." And he said, "I didn't tell you how to feel. I'm just telling you what to do. You can smile. I'm telling you smile. How you feel is, that's up to you. But try feeling sad when smiling." So, right, I don't want to smile. Um, so I kind of got things out of order because I usually like to start with usually. There's no usually. This is the second episode, but but I want to start with a prayer, and I realized after we started that we hadn't done that, and so um, I want to take some time just to say how grateful I am to be here today for the time that you're giving, Batsheva, for the time that anybody who is spending watching and listening is investing in their own process, and that hopefully the words that we say today and the practices we teach can help people feel a greater sense of ease in their life and help them guide through the inevitable challenges of life with a little bit more grace and ease and wisdom. So may that be
Amen.
so. May that be so. Yeah. Amen. Thank you. And so Q&A time. Yay. So now I get to do the
Can
question
I say
asking.
something about that?
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think it has something to do with where mindfulness really sits with me as a
Yeah.
congregational rabbi. Because I feel like these are the practices. Every rabbi sort of has a vibration that they're speaking at, and to me, I have people who want me to give social justice sermons and all this stuff. And, one of our teachers, Lisa Goldstein, used to say it's like, Rabbi Nachman had these like fractals, these bechinot, I think is what the word was. And, and to speak, to change, to bring ease, to have people understand how to find liberation in themselves is tikkun olam on a layer. Like, to me, that's where my laser is wanting to go, because to me, that's where, my delivery of making the world a better place. And oftentimes what your prayer was reminding me of is, the dedication of practice. We do this for all beings. And, I feel like by doing it for myself, it is in service to all beings, because if I'm a transformed person, if I have a little bit of spaciousness, if I have more patience and kindness and compassion and equanimity, then that makes everything that comes into contact with me maybe be able to be received similarly. And, the repercussions of that, go on and on and on and on. So I love that as a prayer, and I think that it's really essential to the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's so thank you for saying that. I was struck by your way of describing what it is that you're doing in your congregation as an extension of this, right? It seems to me that people who are doing this everywhere they go, right? It doesn't really there's no real bounds to it, and that's what I love about it. It's kind of an inclusive practice where there's really no boundary that it doesn't touch, and I'm curious, there's a few things about that pop in my mind. But one of them is that every one of us has our own, as teachers, as rabbis, we have our own like single message that we're just going to package up a million different ways, right? So if you didn't notice what my method is by now, and if you didn't notice Batsheva's until now, I'm sorry if this is the spoiler. But I'm curious, like, how did you get here? What I mean, you know, Jewish mindfulness is its own kind of going through its own reimagining, I think, right now, and has not been widespread, universal, forever and ever. And the way we know that is that when you and I go and encounter people who have been praying in a synagogue for their entire life, and then we start teaching, or not, right, or they went to Hebrew school or whatever, and they come in and they're like, where was this when I was growing? How come my rabbi never taught me this? Or, where was this? And so I'm curious where you encountered it, and let's start there, I guess.
I remember when the first cohort of people, I think it was rabbis, I mean, years ago when my kids were little, before I did Hartman, so it must have been like the early 2000s, I got a flyer from the Institute for Jewish Spirituality, and I said, I'm going to do that, but not now. And it was like 12 years later. I mean, or some such whatever. But I think the short answer to that is that I've had a ton of training that I think is typical of Jews, that is like very neck up, very cerebral, very, like and it's so, I can see why, as Jews, we had to retreat to the mind and to the mental gymnastics, which are the beautiful, moves that Talmud makes, and, halakha, and how we, meander through that. It's a very powerful thing, to see why that was so important throughout history, and why we took it apart in such great detail, and how we got that methodology sort of in our bloodstream. But I've always been a heart-centered person, and so there was always a part of me that felt like, like I wasn't in complete alignment, that I had that there was something, if I wasn't, I wasn't going to be a scholar. That wasn't who I am. And so I really, I tried for a long time to make that my thing. And, I could do it, but my heart wasn't full in it. It always felt like I'm just being intelligent. I'm not necessarily opening hearts and transforming lives. And then and then finally, I did Hartman, which was really an exercise in my brains. Like real, like it hurt more than rabbinical school.
Not
And
in a bad way. I mean, I've been in Hartman, I've been part of Hartman cohorts, and it's just, I mean, the level of mental cerebral learning is wow. I mean, really, I mean, I still think about things I've learned in those seminars today. So, I mean, they're really good. They're really good.
Oh, it was. Listen, it was I felt like I won the lottery for a rabbi because I did the whole fellowship thing and went every 6 months and
Oh,
lived
wow.
with David before he died. And I mean, it was huge. I mean, it was huge and formative, but but we couldn't actually also get together because it was pluralistic. We couldn't get together and do avodah shebalev. Like it was, we couldn't do, we couldn't worship together in a way that we could all, so there was a big part of us that had to kind of get filed at the door. And so it remained a cerebral exercise. And I think right after I came out of that, I was so ripe and ready for something else
Starving.
to come in. And that's when I did the first IJS thing. And then I did every IJS thing. And then I taught with IJS. And then we have all our teachers who have been such great nurturers and that kind of thing. So that's sort of how it evolved. But I think I always, I don't know. I don't know. It just spoke to me on a whole other level of integrating. And
Without knowing really what it is, right? I mean, you couldn't have known from the outside what really richness was to be found in the practice. But something was sort of intriguing to you. You saw, I don't know, a poster or an email or something, and it just said, you're like, oh, why not? Huh? That sounds like it could hit the spot in a different way.
well, it has, I mean, it did have the word spirituality in it. And so I said, I I think that was just the word that was the hook, but I don't think I could have known the personal transformative. And that's really where it all starts, is that when you see how the practice is already starting to change you or liberate you or soften you and help you see more clearly, and then people start to notice that about you, and then everything about life confirms that something is opening and loosening and deepening about you. It just has a momentum all on its own. And I think that's not because I'm a rabbi. That's just because I took the practice seriously and was doing it. And that was sort of how it, and then it becomes a renewing a renewing commitment, and that just keeps building on itself.
So,
um,
can I take a detour a little bit back into
yeah.
martial arts? So one of the things I remember, so one of the things I remember when meeting you, and it was that you're a black belt in some several degrees. Is that correct?
I do have, I earned my third degree black belt in Taekwondo, but I have been retired for a couple of years because I have a shoulder thing that was getting aggravated by a lot of the moves. But yeah,
Sure.
I practiced for about 12 years.
So tell me, in is there have you ever done any thinking about like how the martial art training is similar in many ways to this kind of field, and do you have any reflections on that?
To me, to me, a martial arts practice. First of all, anytime I was ever on the mat, I was 100% there. There was nowhere else I could be.
Yeah,
Or
you
if
got to
I
focus.
wasn't there, it was obvious because I wouldn't be doing what I needed to be doing. So it was very much a mindful movement practice because you knew if you were there or distracted or not there. So it's about showing up and showing up and showing up. The discipline of it, the coming to it regularly over and over and over again has lots of crossover to mindfulness practice. But I think the biggest thing for me is that martial arts was just as much of a mirror to me of my sort of general progress or stuckness in life as mindfulness is. It was just a different way of illuminating what was really up for me. Like if I was bored in taekwondo, that bored was a thing I needed to contend with. If I was moving forward and things were flowing, that meant that there was flow, you know, happening. So in that way, to me, it was always sort of that mirror. And to a certain extent, it's also the same kind of a thing. I mean, I had the unique blessing of being really part of also a community of practice. It wasn't just a dojang, it was really a community. And, so there was a lot of that sort of communal support, which is similar, I think, to, pure mindfulness circles where, like you and I sit every Wednesday and, that's our
Hmm.
circle. And certainly in Buddhism, there's that. And, we have that in our, God, Torah, Israel Trinity. I think that there was also, for me, a very important role of community that was happening there too.
Yeah, I hope everybody has a community. If you don't have one, there are communities available. It's just a matter of us connecting you with them and
Yeah.
making it regular. Like you said, I think part of what I've recognized, I've only been training a few years in jiu-jitsu. It's almost 3 years now. And it's, you got to be there. You got to show up there a few days a week, right? And you can't, and if you have a bad day and, you're a little bit too extra aggressive, that might come back to you, especially in the community of people. So it's kind of like you have to understand that this is, it's a long game and you have to be careful and you have to be pay attention and you have to honor people and respect people. And so I see the same thing in the meditation world as well. It's interesting. The dailiness of it for me was also like um, it's almost the commitment that I've made to myself, because nobody else is expecting me to practice meditation every day. Nobody else forces me to go to the academy every day, just, or if I'm injured or if I'm not feeling so great. I can't tell you how many times I've cried on those mats, not because of an injury, but because of emotion, because of frustration, but because of what's going on with me off of the mats that I can't help but follow me onto the mats. And in the same way with meditation, there are times when I'm sitting in meditation and I find myself crying, and it could be a really good cry that I needed to have for a while, that I've been avoiding. But when I pause and sit down, I have the spaciousness, right? That's what you talked about in the beginning. I can come out of that narrow, or I can recognize, wow, I'm so tight right now. I'm so constricted. I can feel my body is tight. I can feel my shoulders. I can feel my hips, whatever, wherever you feel it, right? Okay, do I really need to hold on that tight right now? So, so tell me, why did you start teaching? What was the transfer? I know you're a rabbi, so maybe it was just natural that way. But I think that for many people, I've seen that people have like there's a transfer moment, or it's like it's not really a moment. It's many moments, but there's like, I'm doing this and I'm learning this as a skill for me, for my life. I think that's most of us start there. I don't think I didn't start with like, oh, I'm gonna go teach this. I was just in need of something, and I went and learned it. So tell me about the transition from learning it to teaching it and sharing it, and what that was like for you?
I think for me, I mean, I definitely went into the Jewish meditation teacher training not thinking I was going to become a retreat teacher on national retreats, or, I just thought about what I wanted to do with mindfulness in the synagogue setting, and to share that. And part of that was because there was a transformation that was going on in me. I wanted to offer that to my congregants. I wanted to have that manifest and available to them as a whole new track in synagogue engagement. So there was a part of it that was just sort of localized to my temple. But then, I started to like really love, I love our teachers. And when they were inviting me to be near them, I was just like, absolutely, whatever I can do to be near you and learn from you. And so it's always been about that for me. It really hasn't been about, um, like, I can't, eventually there'll be a next generation, that, there's generations that have to hold that mantle, but I still feel like a student. I do, and I hold myself that way. And like, you and I are in practice groups. I'm always practicing, and and I know that that'll make me a better teacher when I have the opportunities to teach. But you know, I think that I think that's it, it's not really, it wasn't really like I had a sight on being a meditation teacher. It's more so I love the practice. I want to make it available to other people, and I get to be with these teachers, and this is the way. Either
Yeah,
by taking a program or teaching alongside them in a program, or however I can get it is good.
whatever. Get me in the space with those teachers.
Yeah.
Whatever happens there, I'll be learning, I'll be teaching maybe, but a lot of practicing. Even when you're teaching, there's a lot of practice to be done. It's much more teaching than I'm sorry, much more practicing than teaching, even when we're teaching.
Yeah.
So either way, it's you end up getting a ton of practice, which is great.
Well, and anytime you're doing anything, you're confronting whatever your stuff is. Like even before, I got a little anxious, I get anxious before I have to do things. And so even before this, I was like, what am I going to do? Is it going to come out? And that's my stuff. Like that's like just meeting that, and hold, if I'm able to hold that and say, okay, well, there's that, like Jeff says, habit energy, hello, little habit energy. Actually, I think Thich Nhat, he got that from Thich Nhat Hanh, but hello, my little habit energy. And that's practice, even though the action that I'm doing is teaching. I can just, hold myself with humility and, vulnerability, that's actually so instructive. And so it's less about actually having the exact right words than to just be real, and um and just to show up with whatever is and that's kind of a different measure. And maybe in mindfulness we're able to do that because it's a context that is trying to just be with what is. I mean, that's the goal of it, versus in other forms, in other moments in life where you have to be very skillful or very clear in your words. And I mean, obviously all of those things are good when they can happen and get all put together around in mindfulness. Um but I think that uh if you can bring, if you can, every time you tap into what's true for you is a reinforcement of that muscle, that it will be there when you have to tap into it. Like and that comes over time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, tell me about this new initiative, the women's retreat. I know you did it last year, and we heard from Rebecca that it was actually on like one of the saddest days of the year, or within that range of like of Tisha B'Av, which is this holiday that we're, in the summer generally, where we commemorate the destruction um, of the temple, the Jewish temple that was in Israel in Jerusalem, and it's a day of mourning, and this year is gonna be on what seems to me to be one of the flip sides of the holiday of the calendar, which is Purim, or not Purim, but Adar, the month of joy. So tell me a little bit about that, and what this. Tell me a little more about the retreat itself, because I'm curious to know.
So it's going to be a Thursday through Sunday retreat over Rosh Chodesh Adar, or the celebration of the new month of Adar, and just a short women's identified people who identify as women retreat to, to invite that quality into our practice, into our lives, because it's the seasonal quality that's being invited in the Jewish calendar, being the month of Purim, which is a joyous month. So, um, and it was and it is intentional, because the very first one that we did was all about acknowledging and being with deep grief, and that was particularly timely because it was in July or August, and we were all really deeply grieving what the pandemic had been taking away from us, and it was the first sort of online retreats that people were starting to take and getting into a new reality, and there was a lot to integrate in terms of grief. And now we're in this different moment in the Jewish calendar. We're in a different year. We're in a maybe hopefully a new world, and the Jewish calendar is sort of inviting us to invite these other qualities, and to a certain extent, that's sort of what Judaism is. That's the rhythm of we're just kind of falling into what the Jewish calendar's rhythms are. But we're going to celebrate Rosh Chodesh. We're going to explore the idea of cultivating joy, and making sure that we have an appropriate relationship with joy, one that's where we're able to savor, and we're also going to be focusing on some themes around Rosh Chodesh and newness, and the relationship between the new month and newness within us, and not necessarily falling into old patterns, and that sometimes just disrupting, declaring that we don't know, or disrupting our patterns, is a route for joy to enter into our field of consciousness. And so it's going to be playful. Who knows what's going to actually manifest, but those are some of the conversations as staff that we're mudgering around, and then it's gonna unfold as it does, which will
Yeah,
be sort of depending on whoever shows up and what we do. But yeah,
yeah.
but it'll be a typical retreat with silence and walking and talks, and all the regular stuff. We'll have Shabbat, and it's Shabbat Rosh Chodesh, which is you know especially joyful. So we've got a lot of ingredients that will magically put together and share.
And it always
And,
comes out. So
and
this, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
the connection between women and Rosh Chodesh. So it's
There's a lot
there's an old
there. Yeah. There's a ton there. It's very rich. I think that if you have been practicing for a while and really want to deepen and find out what's possible, and this sounds to you like something that is could work for you, right? Just could, right? You have a feeling you're attracted to it, so come on down. and try and see, because there's without experiencing it, you and I could never explain to somebody quite what the practice does. And the thing that I always tell myself before I'm getting nervous to teach, or especially on retreat when I get extra nervous, is okay, Ariel, um, just let them do the practice, because that does it. Because, like, just get out of the way. Hmm?
Sheila Weinberg says, let the retreat, don't do the retreat, let the retreat do you. Let the retreat do
Yes,
you. And it's that same thing. It'll work no matter what we're doing. But I think that there is something, that, first of all, it's great for people who are beginners. It's online, which means you can sort of titrate, how much sitting practice you want to do and how intense you want to make it. So there's a lot of, you know, ability to make it as deep or as introductory as you wish, with plenty of instruction and everything else. Those bigger themes are going to kind of weave their way in, but the practice is the practice is the practice. And, sustained practice is always its own, success.
it does
Just
it
to
its own thing. Yeah, there's no goal beyond, and the practice takes you, right? That's my experience. And good, skillful, thoughtful teaching is, to me, like kind of like somebody who's guiding you on the mountain. They know all the passes. They've been up and down it, and you don't. So they'll care for you on the way, and it's really very important to have that kind of support through something that can be really a tender and joyous and spiritual and connecting process. So I know we only have a minute or so left. Um,
The only last thing I want to say, though,
yeah.
which also so special to me about the teaching team, since you mentioned it, is, Rebecca belongs to sort of a young generation, and I belong to sort of a middle generation, and Sheila belongs to our, wise generation. And so, the guiding, I think, is so, you know, we just cover a lot of territory in terms of who we are and what we bring and what our journeys have been in the practice. And so I'm super excited about that team and what we get to offer together in that to the people who'll be journeying up the mountain with us.
Multi-generational, single gender time, and an opportunity to cultivate a safe space with only your gender, I think, is really important. And um, and so I'm excited to support. I'm hopeful that our time together will bring more people to retreat, and that that will also bring more good into the world. Do you have a prayer? I kind of give you an opportunity to leave us with a prayer. I didn't forewarn you. I like for it to be spontaneous. Um, but if you have a prayer for our time, or for that you want to share, I'll talk another minute or so until you can gather yourself, and then uh, give you that
Okay.
opportunity.
Well, I'll just tap in. May all who have come to this teaching space and learning space be opened. May you know the next steps on the path of your journey. May you share that journey of liberation with all you come into contact with. And may it leave this world a better place for all beings. Amen.
Um,